Hello. Welcome to another Alive mini talk on being human. This is Stacy. And today I want to talk about healing our inner child and what that really means. I want to first share that years ago when I was training in mental health, getting my master's degree, I thought inner child work was a bunch of BS. I was not interested at all in exploring that. It felt really new agey. It felt like it wasn't evidence-based, right? Our inner children was just this concept. And I was not buying into it. But I will tell you that as I learned to do the deeper work and learned both personally and professionally to work with the subconscious, our inner child is very much a part of our healing process. In fact, it's an essential part of our healing process. I believe that everything that we do around working or besides working with the inner child is really just their Band-Aids. When we go to the root of the things that are really our core wounds, the root of why we can't change certain patterns or certain emotions that emerge, it always has to do with a younger version of ourselves. And in order to change it in any way, shape, or form in our life right now, we have to learn how to work with those younger parts of us. And that starts by having an acceptance that those younger parts of us exist in all of us. It is part of being human. The way that I conceptualize this and the way that I explain this in my office is by using an analogy or a visual of having everybody think about every single time in your life from the time you were born, even before you were born in the womb, perhaps that you had a strong emotional reaction to something that was going on. It could have been fear, it could have been sadness or grief, it could have just been shock or surprise. And every time we had a strong emotional reaction, but we had to hold it in, we had to contain it, either because we didn't know what to do with it, it felt too scary or overwhelming to let it out, or it just wasn't safe to let it out, or it wasn't acceptable in our family to let out certain emotions. So every time we experienced a strong emotional reaction but didn't have a chance to process through it, it stayed stuck in us. And I know that I've touched on this in a couple other talks. But to add another layer to this, I want you to think about in those moments, we have a split. We have what others might call a piece of arrested development, where there is that child part of us at that age that had that experience that just gets stuck there. Stuck in that overwhelm, stuck in that not knowing what to do with it. And it's those child parts that show up when we're triggered. Another analogy that I use a lot in my office is the visual of we are, as adults, the adults that we are today, that we're driving a bus. Our brain and our being, the culmination of our being, is a bus. And a lot of times when we're doing our healing work and we have a self-awareness, the part of us, the adult part of us, is in the driver's seat. And we're making conscious choices and we're following what rules work for us and we're aware of what's happening. But when we get triggered emotionally, It's like that younger part of us takes over the wheel of the bus. And for most of us, these are really young parts of us from childhood. They have no business driving a bus, which is why it's so confusing to the adult us of what is happening. Like, why does this keep happening? It's like I'm out of control. I can't control this. Well, it's because perhaps there's a 2-year-old driving the bus in that moment, and it is confusing. It's confusing for that 2-year-old part of us too. And so when we're doing inner child work, what that really essentially means is being able to connect to that younger part of us that's really activated. And being able to even ask what that part of us needs. And then being able to learn how to soothe that child part of us. And this is where I want, a lot of us are not really good at self-compassion. We're not really good at taking care of ourselves. And so this is where I will ask you to think about somebody in your life that when they're upset, you don't have any problem soothing them. It could be your child. It could be a niece or nephew. It could just be a friend or somebody that you really unconditionally love and support. And we want to use that as a blueprint for how to work with the child parts in us. Because I guarantee anybody who's listening to this talk, you're here because you're heart-centered. And you know how to care for others. And now it's about applying that same level of care to the different aspects of ourselves. So as you're doing some of the meditations or listening to some of the talks, and I'm asking you to go deeper, to think about some of the situations that trigger you, to be curious about that, to drop in even deeper and ask yourself, where does that come from? Another layer, another question that I ask myself all the time and that I ask of my clients in my office is, how old does that part of you feel? When you're triggered like that, how old does that part of you feel? And you'll be surprised at what comes to you. It's not something you have to overanalyze. It's not something that even has to logically make sense. Again, healing work is not linear, rational at all. We're working with the emotional body, the emotional aspect of us. So asking yourself, how old does that part of me feel? And letting that answer come to you. If that answer is 2, it's going to look a little different, or what you're going to be called to do is going to look a little different than if that part of you is 16, right? But whatever comes to you is the part of you that is needing the acknowledgement, the love, and the support in that particular moment. And this is a really powerful exercise. The whole goal, as we're doing all of our healing work, layer by layer by layer, is to start integrating these child parts of us that are stuck in this arrested development, helping these parts of us feel safe and loved, and integrating them into who we are today. It's not that they'll never have to show up or we'll never have to pay attention to them again. But they really do start to calm down as we become more acquainted with all of these aspects of us, as we learn how to hold them a little closer, to soften around them, to acknowledge them. Essentially, it would be, to use the bus analogy again, it would be me walking up to, say, a 4-year-old part of me and grabbing the steering wheel, putting my arm around this little girl and saying, "It's okay, honey, I've got it. I've got it now. I can drive the bus, and why don't you sit on my lap for a while? Let me just hold you, but I can take it from here. And we all have to find those words that resonate with those parts of us. Again, asking, how old does that part feel? And what does that part of us need? What did they not get at that age, at that particular time, or even in that moment, if you have that level of awareness? This is really, really powerful. And the more that we have this integration, the more whole that we feel. A lot of us want to instinctively push away these parts of us. I don't want to feel like a 2-year-old. I don't want to behave in this way. It's crazy that sometimes I feel like a moody teenager, right? But when we push against these parts of us, we are rejecting them. And what happens is then they have to scream a little louder to get our attention, just like any child might do. And that can come in a lot of different forms. It can manifest physically, it can manifest emotionally, it can manifest in a lot of different ways, where a common pathway is people who start to have a lot of anxiety or even panic attacks, and they don't understand necessarily what the trigger is. A lot of times it's a younger parts of us screaming for our attention. I can't do this anymore. I need help. And so instead of pushing them away, the more that we help them, the more whole and strong we feel. So any of the meditations in this app, even the yoga practices and the pranayama, they're going to help you connect that body and mind. So remembering that our physical body is really intertwined with our subconscious. And we have to be connected at that level to be able to connect to these parts of us, to be able to ask the question and to receive the answer. We have to be connected in body and mind. So any of the tools in this app are going to help you get there. I also want to say, stay tuned, as I'm in the process of creating an actual inner child guided meditation. So if this is something that interests you, that you really want to delve deeper into, then this is coming. Okay. I think that's all for now. So stay tuned for more, and goodbye.